Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the Alex Thomas Show. And I'm here with my special guest, Andre Watson.
Hey, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre, for joining me. I asked Andre, the pleasure is all mine. I asked Andre to join me because of the upcoming May 7th vote in Ypsilanti Township to ban recreational marijuana establishments. It's something that I think that there's a discussion that's sorely lacking, and I hope to have that discussion now. And that discussion is the real ramifications of banning commercial marijuana. I don't think that we've talked about the economic aspects of it. We haven't talked about the racial aspect. I wanted to get Mr. Watson to talk about those issues because he is a 1995 graduate of Wayne State School of Finance. He's been working with 20 years in the real estate and investment counseling industry, but specifically today, 13 years in the cannabis industry. So to have that discussion that's sorely lacking, we got an expert, somebody very informed, and someone that cares about the community. Something I just left out that's a big part.
Absolutely. Sincere passion.
Yeah. Google Andre Watson is a great, I'm surprised him here. I caught a great segment on PBS with you talking about that commitment to community and finance. So enough. Yeah. I think they know you're a solid brother.
Okay. Sounds good.
You know, and you have an informed opinion. What is the state of cannabis marijuana nationally, Michigan? I'm sure you give some of the basic information. What do we need to know?
We need to know first and foremost that as a community, it's imperative that we are aware that this is a business, and it's also medical value. Cannabis will evolve and become a permanent part of our society. So any groups or any communities that are not aware that you're at the beginning stages of something that will become a permanent part of your life. Yes, laws are catching up. Yes, certain companies are catching up as far as their policies on consuming cannabis. But for African Americans in particular, the opportunity is something we need to take advantage of, if given the opportunity, because if we don't participate now or early, the likelihood of us really taking a healthy amount or making a healthy amount from this industry is not as high.
You know, I'm so glad that you brought that up, and we're going to definitely delve into that. Unfortunately, I don't want to lose a good segment of my audience. We're not just going to talk about the African American community. Right. We're going to do the broad. And I know, and I'm sincere, because this is I think there's a certain aspect of the audience that, you know, when you start talking about the African American community, they might tune out a bit. Yeah. And please, because we mentioned that because we're both so passionate about the community, but it's an integral part of this broader discussion. And also,
and there's an add-on there. The reason why I specifically state the African American community is it's a community that really has been devastated largely by drugs in America. So how ironic would it be for that community in particular to almost be excluded just by it being uninformed or simply by not being in the know, not having knowledge matters in America. So I specifically stated the African American community because actually I'm an experienced product of it. I was developing during the crack craze. We never saw initiatives coming in to heal our community after such drugs ravaged our community. So as a community in particular, if someone is at the point where legalization is a real viable option, why not repurpose or recycle the energies and resources from this industry and complement that community that's still spiraling somewhat from the effects of drugs?
Yeah, and that what you just mentioned, that's a national issue in the African American community. We know so much in the Detroit area. We know how it hit here in Washtenaw County. The reality, May 7th, the Ypsilanti Township Board of Trustees is going to vote to ban commercial marijuana establishments. Their argument is that because the state laws have not developed, they need to ban it now because if they don't, they will lose control of zoning and control of the quality of life. And this is the argument despite 68% of the electorate voting for it, having read the clear language of the ballot too. But in terms of their their argument for banning. Do you have any immediate thoughts or maybe?
Yeah, I would recommend staying proactive and aware. Banning is, I believe, would be a harsh or more extreme. And I understand the intentions of just being cautious before allowing an industry to come into one's community. Staying aware and engaged allows you to be in a position to govern anything that could threaten your community in its normal evolution. So banning, I believe, is extreme. Staying astute and aware and allowing your citizens to be aware, I think is wise. But banning, no. I think the state of Michigan right now is doing a lot of evaluation of how to implement this program. But they've learned from some of the mistakes made from the whole medical implementation, which, by the way, is still happening. But the growth of this industry is going to be with us. And so I think it's imperative that our local leaders stay aware, but don't prevent the citizens from participating in an industry that has medical value, has for some people's choice of relaxation, and has an opportunity for economic development for the overall communities, and in particular, the certain minority communities that should have a right of participating.
And something that you said really struck out to me. You said, be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
When I first heard that the Township Board was considering the ban, I said, oh man, we're going to have to talk about this, do a special show. And then when I heard one of the township officials said that we need to be proactive and ban this. And it just showed just the fundamental disconnect, I think, and a lack of recognition for the reality of the marijuana industry.
Correct.
Because I'm thinking, and from what you just said, with this ban, it's immediately locking our township in as consumers, getting those dollars out, and this is a ever expanding. It's inevitable. It's going to be part.
It is.
So it's not being proactive. It's being ignorant of the reality, I think, and in terms of economic development, forcing us into the opposite of proactive.
Correct.
We're going to be playing catch up 25 years from now.
I agree. And Alex, to your point, there are synergistic opportunities where it's a new industry. We can't really ignore the fact that GM has significant layoffs, that Ford Motor Company almost every year they come through and they invite some of their employees, some of the more legacy heavy employees, to retire, wink wink. So the new economy is necessary. All viable options, every city needs to be proactive with economic development opportunities, as well as being proactive with just not choosing to move through fear. It's not easy. We've all been conditioned, but moving through fear and stay in enlightenment, and make sure you gain the perspective, because your vision the part of you that carries your vision as a leader will determine largely the fate of your individual community. There's times where being a visionary matters. You can ask a Henry Ford. You can ask many great examples out here in commerce world, that being a visionary helped and mattered a whole lot. So I would challenge everyone to push through the initial feelings or thoughts and allow it to be governed by what's great, best for your people. Economic empowerment is essential, and giving unique opportunities when timing matters. You can't wait for this industry to be developed and then go back and say, oh yeah, why don't you think about opening a facility? No, by then the price points will be so high, and you'll have a systemic removal of those entrepreneurs who are trying to get in at the ground level, which, by the way, is still very challenging. So don't add more obstacles, but empower the communities to have the opportunity. Timing matters here.
And because we're limited for time, I'm at our great Ypsilanti Public Library on this special edition of the Alex Thomas Show. But to your point, as far as the proactive issue and this growing, it seems to me that the challenges to entering the market, which you just mentioned, are so high. And as far as those challenges are exacerbated for the African American community, and for the mainstream, just total, from a holistic view, it keeps the little guy out. The little, which has been so much a part of the American culture, the small business owner. culture of
Majority
cannabis.
business owners are, yeah.
The culture of cannabis.
Yes.
So, I guess in this long-winded way, I'm saying this vote is preventing that involvement of the little guy and leaving the floor. When we seed that ground, we're seeding it to corporate interests and those connected. And that issue is going to doubly affect the African American community, which has been so impacted.
I wholeheartedly agree. I agree, and I believe that the energies being used now to ban or thoughts of banning, I think that energy should use to create the craft-like concept of entrepreneurs. Use that energy to be creative to avoid just the large companies from coming in and blasting through the industry. We know those threats. We have, large companies now. Think about the farming industry in today. How devastated the local and individual farmers have been, and now you have these large facilities out that provides our food. And I don't want to go into a tangent, but there's some levels of vulnerability with that concept as well. This is the beginning of an industry. We should not be naive at any level, naive to threat. Nope, we're not going to let people come in and destroy the culture of your community. Leadership cannot do that. But also, leadership has to be visionaries enough and wise enough, and not messing with anyone's ability here, but be wise and informed enough. This is new, it's scary for some people, but you have to be wise to empower your constituents. And your leadership matters in this space.
And just within Ypsilanti Township, which is why I asked you here, 68% of the electorate voted for it. Definitely wanted commercial recreational marijuana. We're talking about 32% that voted against, and we're talking about the Township Board, curiously, for that argument that we said. It seems that getting lost for a second.
The level of disconnect.
The level of the arguments against those groups.
Yes.
That 32%, that Township Board, and also a significant amount of the Black church.
Yes.
I hope that they listen to this, and you've just been really reiterating about the importance of we're cutting ourselves out, seeding ground.
Yes.
So that Black church and that 32% that voted against it and that Township Board, those arguments that bad for children, the wrong kind of people, by banning it, this doesn't do anything to address those concerns. In fact, it maintains the status quo, isn't it?
Yes.
If we have an adult real discussion about marijuana, we can study it medically and have its effect, which we have all we have is anecdotal and history. Yes. We know no one's ever OD'd from marijuana.
Correct.
I'm not a scientist, I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm like 68% of the people that voted for it were familiar with its effects and its history and the malinformation or the false information that's been given about it.
Correct.
We understand the reality, but that 32% and those people that are strongly against it, I don't think it's an informed opinion. And I don't think they realize what they're seeding and how those concerns aren't being addressed with a ban like this.
Agreed. And the facts that would support that concept, Alex, is if you look at the number of churches that we have and you look at the different congregations, and if you were to ask them on a given Sunday, stand up if you are on opiates, stand up if you're on a synthetic, if you're on pain medication in some form, or if you have a level of discomfort that you're attempting to treat with some drug that makes you feel awkwardly. Why not? And this is really what moved me, Alex, because, to be honest with you, I've never had a lot of experience with cannabis as far as being a consumer. But when I see certain communities, and my community in particular, left vulnerable due to lack of awareness, I commonly hear the frustrations of, we don't want our young kids more devastated by this drug. I don't want our community, or any community, more devastated by this drug. But this drug is going to happen in many forms. But if I have the choice of traditional pain medication, which is creating an epidemic throughout the nation right now, and another level of devastation, or cannabis, I'm going to choose cannabis. And if I have the option of saying, hey, Mrs. Jones, you've been a pillar within our community. I know you're committed to community activism. I know you attend church, so your religious identification is well noted, and you've done great things through the churches. But Mrs. Jones, can I challenge you to understand what you're consuming? Can I challenge you to understand that there's another viable option? Can I challenge you to understand that some of those young guys walking around smelling like weed, they need to get a job where they're smelling like weed in a legitimate sense.
Absolutely.
From economic empowerment. Because we can't expect these young people to just do nothing. That's one of the problems. We need to stimulate with more real job opportunities. And this is not just this is not a golden pill or magic solution. This is one part of an economic development. This is one opportunity that, if it comes around, you should take advantage of.
And to that black church, and to that black church and the greater community, we're gonna have to get out of here in like 5 minutes. I was distracted. But to that black church and the greater community that is against it, we know the statistical evidence shows that whites consume cannabis at the same or greater rates. Yeah. And those youth aren't going to jail. Our communities are over-policed by banning commercial marijuana. You're keeping the black market. You're funneling kids to the school-to-prison pipeline.
It does. It supports that. And actually, I'm really leaving today to have a conversation. The state of Michigan is really attempting to get insight from those in the industry that would allow them to create some type of equitable opportunity within the recreational laws that allow certain communities to get levels of support, acknowledging the levels of devastation that specific communities have experienced. So the state is trying to really get this right. So there's a lot of refined, learn from mistakes that will be implemented in this new policy. So those who have the real concern of, we don't want this thing to come into our community because it's not really been thought of or not considered or we haven't learned from, we've actually given a whole lot of energy. It's been a lot of trial and error, as in most new industry. I don't think the first, when Henry Ford thought of, bringing the Model T here, I don't think it was received super well. It sometimes change is uncomfortable for many people.
And as we close out, can you give us some numbers as far as currently and projected for the size of this industry?
Yeah, this industry is definitely, some say it's even rivaling that of soda. So if you could imagine, for example, imagine beer, when beer was just in a brown, bottle, or imagine medicine, because they're used for medical and recreation. Imagine medicine when medicine was just used in some, jar, So you're at the beginning stages before society even learned how to responsibly enjoy the value and benefits of cannabis. You're at the beginning. Like it or not, here we are. In the world, this is happening throughout the world, not just Michigan.
You give me a $13 billion number or $1 billion or
easily over $13 billion.
And that was for nationwide.
Easily. But the number of revenues will be incredible. This is, if not one of the largest and fastest growing sectors within America, and it's allowing certain areas that have been devastated to have new life by creative design. It goes into areas that have been devastated and neglected, and the remnants of the industries that are eroding.
Thank you, Andre, for coming out.
Thank you, sir.
Please come out May 7th, express your opinion, let the township know how you feel about banning commercial marijuana in our beautiful township and going against the will of 68% of the voters. Thank you.
Wish you the best.